that is 7 Sabbaths. Until tomorrow after the 7th Sabbath for Shabbat, you were to count 50 days. Everyone say 50. 50. That's where we get the word Pentecost, Pente. Pente is from the word 50. So we're counting the days. You count up to the 50th day. And it goes on to say, and then present a new grain offering to Adonai. You're to bring out of your houses 2 loaves of bread for a wave offering, made of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour. They're to be baked with hummus as first fruits to Adonai. That is leaven. So these are leaven. Let's continue reading. You're to present along with the bread 7 one-year-old lambs without blemish, 1 young bull, 2 rams, and they will become a burnt offering to Adonai. With their meal offering, their drink offerings, an offering made by fire, the sweet aroma to Adonai, to Yahweh. And also you are to offer 1 male goat for sin offering, and a pair of year-old male lambs for a sacrifice of fellowship offerings. The Kohen, the priest, is to wave them with the bread of the first fruits, as a wave offering before Adonai with the 2 lambs. And they shall be holy to Adonai for the priest, or the Kohen. Let's keep reading. You are to make a proclamation on the same day that there is to be a holy convocation. And you should do no regular work. This is a statute forever. Everyone say forever. Forever. In all your dwellings throughout your generations. And it gets a little interesting here because we continue the portion. Now when you reap the harvest of your land, you are not to reap the furthest corners, hard to say, furthest corners of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Rather, you are to leave them for the poor, for the outsider, or the stranger. For I am Yahweh Adonai, your God. Number new covenant. Don't say, it's in John 4, verse 35. This is Yeshua saying this. Don't say 4 more months and then comes the harvest. Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields. They are white and ready for harvest. Amen. Turn to your neighbor and say, ready for that harvest. You can be seated. So Shavuot. Pardon my voice this morning. I talk a little soft. I'm going to try to hold the mic up. Shavuot is a season of rejoicing. I want you to see a couple pictures. There are customs and things that we do in Jewish tradition. If you're non-Jewish, it's okay. Shavuot is celebrating Pentecost. Just touching briefly on that is we understand that you count from, we understand it to be first fruits is the Sunday. We always see it as first fruits as on that Sunday after the regular Sabbath in the week of Passover. Now, just to give you a little history, and then we're going to get into the word. But you count your weeks. And so they call that the counting of the Omer. Everybody say Omer. So you would measure some things out, and in ancient Israel you would count this. And so you count. And you're examining your days, and you're coming up into that season of Shavuot 50, where Jewish people say that number one, this is a harvest time. We've harvested the barley, but now we're harvesting the wheat. So the wheat is being harvested. It's a celebration of harvest. Everyone say harvest. If you lived in ancient Israel, your economy had to do with your harvest. I'm watching on the news how our economy is being affected by tariffs and trades and harvest things. How many of you enjoy vanilla ice cream? Well, they're saying that the harvest is low. You know where they produce that? Just a side note, Madagascar. And they're saying that is not growing as much as it should, and so there is a shortage in vanilla bean ice cream. Oh my goodness. But little things like that affect the economy. It affects people's wallets and taste buds and everything else. In ancient Israel, your harvest had to do with your finances and your money. And so here they are to count this, and they are to bring this in, so to speak. We celebrated the barley. And by the way, there are 3 Hebrew holidays that you were to celebrate the harvest and come up. And that would be, when were they commanded to come up? First fruits, Passover first fruits, in that time, Pentecost, Shavuot, and what was the final? Sukkot. So we see the harvest. Everyone say harvest. So we're talking about the wheat harvest here and seeing how these are being offered as unto the Almighty. And now today's tradition, the rabbis say we look back and we see that this actually celebrates when the Torah was given to the Jewish people, to the nation of Israel. And so we understand that, and there are some traditions that say, well, maybe, maybe not, but we celebrate it as such. If you read the book of Acts, what took place on Pentecost? The Spirit, the Ruach was given. So Yeshua, it's interesting because Yeshua told them, the Messiah told them, he said, he didn't just say go anywhere. He said, you go up to the upper room and you wait and you tarry. 50 days. You wait until that 50th day. They were waiting. And Acts 2 tells us that when the day of Pentecost had what? Fully come. Everybody say fully come. So what does that mean? That means that they were counting up to the day when something was going to happen. They would be celebrating the Torah. Celebrate. But now watch what happens. On that day, we understand in Acts 2 that the Spirit now, the Bible says, Scripture says, that the Spirit of Messiah is given. And now on the same day that the written Torah was given, now the Spirit, the Messiah Spirit comes and writes the living Torah on the hearts of his people. Isn't that beautiful? He fills them with his ruach, and they begin to speak in other languages, or tongues, as some people say. But by the way, this was not a tongue that just edified itself. This was a tongue from all nations. Isn't it interesting that he's writing because what's in your heart is going to come out of your mouth? And so the word is being written in their heart, that living word is coming alive, and now they're speaking it. But it's not just to Israel now. Now it's to all nations. Beautiful picture. So you see the Ruach, the Spirit, moving in the midst of people. I want you to see something this morning as we cover just a few things here. A Shavuot celebration, you'll see if usually people dress in white. There's a lot of flowers. If you come into the congregation, you would see that it's tradition to dress things up with white flowers and roses. And it's just a beautiful time. We usually do that. We'll put roses along the way or do something to a lot of greens and greenery in life because it is a celebration of life. Let's go to the next. Just some pictures of people celebrating on Shavuot in the land. There's the farmers. So we're seeing them celebrate the Torah. These are some children carrying the Torah scrolls. Is that it? Yep. That's it. So Shavuot is the Hebrew word for Pentecost. Everyone say Shavuot. Shavuot. And the root, Shavuot means weeks, by the way. Shavuot. It's the root word in Hebrew is Shabbat. And it means we get the word for weeks. What other is the number 7? 7 is a perfect number. It's a complete number. So here we're counting by the Sabbath is the seventh day. Everybody say Shabbat. Shabbat. What do you hear in that root? Because Hebrew letters have roots. Shabbat. Shabbat. Hear that? Shabbat. Shabbat. So what is that? That is the seventh. On the seventh day you rest. So now we're counting 7 Sabbaths. It is a spiritual complete holiday. So on this day something would happen. The Torah was given. Now the Spirit of Messiah is given. And they are proclaiming things. I want you to see some insights that I saw. We're just going to talk about some insights today. Let's look at the root of it, Shavuot. I don't know why my clicker is not working today. So the root word of it is Shabbat. And I found it interesting that this word means pledge. So the root word for Shavuot is pledge. Everybody say pledge. Shavuot is seen as a time when the bridegroom, watch this, is pledging himself to his bride. So what did we see with ancient Israel? We saw the bridegroom, and he's marrying a nation. He takes a nation from a nation. He pulls out a people of Hebrews and makes sure that he gets these people out of Egypt, and he takes them to the mountain. And the mountain acts as a chuppah. What happened at the mountain when he gave the Torah? You know what the rabbis say in their writings? That the mountain actually lifted up like a chuppah. And it hovered over the people. How many have ever been to a Jewish wedding? You ever been to a Jewish wedding? They'll take the prayer shawl. They will stretch it over the bridegroom and the bride because it's an act of saying, you are under my covering. Remember, this is called the kanaf, the wing, the corner of the garment. And so I take you as my bride, and I'm going to cover you, and I'm going to protect you, and I'm going to provide for you. And the husband and the wife stand there. And it's interesting because I've done many, many weddings. The weddings are good and everything is fun. But it is not complete until one thing happens. And that's the pledge. Everybody say pledge. You've got all the stuff. You get the happiness and the joy and the dancing and all the, the bridegrooms and all this stuff, whatever those grooms and maids of honor and all the stuff. But the real stuff doesn't take place until they come before each other. And they look lovingly into each other's eyes. And I always say, do you so-and-so and take so-and-so, according to the laws of Moshe of Israel, the Torah, to be your husband or your bride? And they always say, I do. I've never had one yet say I don't. Because see, when you're pledging with your words, you're pledging with your heart. What's in your heart is going to come out of your mouth. And so the bride says to the bridegroom, I do. The pledge. And when he says I do to her, watch this. When he pledges, Shabbat, when he pledges and makes a pledge to the woman, he's saying, I'll never leave you. You're a part of me. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. As he did in Israel when he lifted the mountain over the people in the desert as a chuppah. And he said, you're my people. And by the way, what was his pledge to his bride in the desert? I love this concept because we tend to think of it as Charlton Heston 10 Commandments. Anybody remember? You know, we remember. But the rabbis say that when Israel came in and his presence came down upon the mountain, that the flowers, all of the desert began to blossom. He provided for his wedding his own flowers for his bride. Everything just started producing, all in the desert. And here you have a bride and a bridegroom, and he says, I do. Do you take Israel to be your bride? Moses was the go-between. Do you, Israel, take your God to be your God? And they said, we will what?
Hear and we will do.
We will do, we will hear. But I do. Everyone say I do. It's interesting. I do. The actions connected to that. I do. I love you. I do. And the pledge. And what was his pledge to her? The Torah. What was his pledge? His word. How does a bridegroom pledge to his bride? With his words. What did he pledge to Israel? He gave them his word to say, I do. Isn't that a beautiful concept? Israel, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. And so Shavuot, if you think about it, Shavuot, Shabbat. Let's take it into the book of Acts now. Let's see, what did he tell? What happened at the book of Acts? What did it look like in Acts 2?
It looked like a massive revival.
Did it look kind of crazy? Did it look like, people were running around? I mean, what did it really look like? We all have our ideas about what it looked like, but you know what happened was they're waiting and they're tarrying for something to take place. And the Spirit comes in like a roar. And it's interesting because it's seen as a gift to his people. And when he gave that, here's what struck me, guys. When he gave his Spirit, it was a pledge of saying, I do to you. Israel, I do again. And let's, we're saying, well, Israel, but listen, if you're a Jew or a Gentile, we are grafted in through the Messiah. I mean, you're part of one new man. So he says, I do. And he gives them his pledge. What happened on Shavuot? A pledge to his people. A pledge, a gift to say, here is my word to you. I will never leave you, and I will never forsake you. Aren't you glad he never leaves us and he never forsakes us? It's interesting. I want to share this morning, that he's totally committed. Say this with me. My God is totally committed. Shabbat, the pledge. If you believe in Yeshua the Messiah, and what do we see in the book of Acts? He's totally committed to his people. Yeshua said, you can go to the ends of the earth and I'll never leave you and I'll never forsake you. Read it in the Greek. It's really, if you study the Greek, it literally says 5 times, I will never, ever, 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 never, no. 5 times I'll never leave you. Yeshua is totally committed to his people. How many of you know that? Well, Rabbi, we don't feel him sometimes. Sometimes we don't feel his presence. Sometimes it feels like I'm just all by myself in this world. But he says, he comes up and they stand before me, and they're not committed in their relationship to Hashem, to Adonai, and to each other. Ain't gonna work. If they're not totally. We need to be committed to him with all our hearts. Amen. Because he says, I'm committed to you. How many know that he's committed to you? Yes. Well, I don't feel like he is. You have to trust his word. That he's committed. Sar Shalom did this. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 1. I want you to show you this. Now it is God who establishes us with you. Everyone say that's me. In the Messiah. He anointed us. He set his seal on us. And he gave us the Ruach, or the Spirit, in our hearts as a pledge. Shabbat. Shavuot. The Spirit. When I saw this, brother, in my heart this week, I just went, wow, just like you did. That the Spirit of Messiah, guys, is not just to give us goosebumps or chicken bumps, or whatever you want to call it. It's not just to make us feel good, although that may be a byproduct, but the Spirit of Messiah is a pledge given to say, I'll never leave you, and I'll never forsake you. And we say, I do. I do. How many say, I do? Some say, I don't. No, we say, I do. It's a pledge that we make, and He sold out to us. Sar Shalom understood that. It's a pledge. He pledges Himself. He's committed. I think we're in a season where we need, and hear me when I say this, as a body of people, we need to always examine our hearts to say, how committed really are we to Him? How committed are we? How committed are we? Are we totally sold out, or, okay, I'm sold out here to Him, that this part, I think I'll just hold back a little bit. This part, I don't know what it is, but maybe we do that. And I think we're always called as a people to examine our hearts and see, where are we really, are we fully committed? Because in the end, when it's all said and done, the reward is seeing the face of the bridegroom. Amen. That's the reward. Listen, the reward is not the crowns. The reward is not heaven. The reward is, and listen, that's all going to be good. How many know it's all going to be good? I'm looking forward to the new body with no more laryngitis and no more, I'm looking forward to the banquet in heaven. I'm looking forward to fellowshipping with the saints, to seeing the Tzaddikim, to seeing Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm looking forward to going up to David and saying, can you teach me how to play some of that stuff? I'm looking forward to fellowshipping. But the reward is to see Messiah's face. Amen. That's the I do. But right now He says, though you may not see me, I'm still committed to you. Are we committed to Him? Jewish man goes to marry a girl. You guys know this. And he leaves for 1 to 2 years. Leaves for 1 to 2 years. Interesting, that's the first part of the wedding. She's got to prepare herself. She never knows. And she may even miss him in that year and say, man, I miss seeing his face. I miss him. 1 to 2 years. It's been 2,000 years since the Messiah has left us, guys. But He's not really left us. That the groom would send to the bride, maybe in a season where, in the middle of the season, just to remind her, I still do. I'm still with you. Aren't you glad He's still with us? The pledge. Everybody say pledge. Pledge. This is the pledge that the groom gives the bride. I want to share this with you. Shabbat's pledge, and we talked about commitment. Hear me when I say this, and I pray y'all still love me. But He will not fill with His Spirit what is not fully committed. Got quiet. He is not going to fill something that is not fully committed. And we all say, well, we want the Spirit. Listen, I want the Spirit. We all want the fullness of the Spirit. But we have to examine our hearts, because He says, are you fully committed? Can I fully trust you in these things? And I'm not saying this to beat ourselves up, because we all go through stuff, right? What I'm saying is, He will not take of His Spirit and pour out in His Spirit and fill it up unless it's fully committed. Everyone say fully committed. What's our commitment levels? What were the commitment levels of the believers in Acts 2 in the upper room? Do you realize that some teachers teach this? Hear me when I say it. 120 in the upper room. But teachers teach that they actually started with 500. 500 believers. 500 are waiting for something to happen. And little by little, one says, man, I'm getting tired. And wanders off, another wanders off, another wanders off. And they're down to 120. Fully committed. Sold out. Pledging themselves to the Messiah. What happened to those 120? They were filled with the Ruach HaKodesh. By the way, Mary, the mother of Messiah, was also there. Fully committed. Filled with the Spirit. They went out and they began and they turned the world upside down to proclaim the good news of Messiah Yeshua. 120 that were fully committed. Everybody say fully committed. Fully committed. How committed are we? How many want to be used by the Messiah? Amen. When you go home, take some time to ask and say, am I fully committed? Show me by your Spirit. Am I fully committed? He'll show you. Lovingly, He will show you. Interesting. What story, and a couple side notes here. Actually, this is not a side note, it's a major part. What story do we read in Shavuot at Pentecost?
Ruth.
Book of Ruth. Everybody say Ruth. Ruth is a story of commitment. You have a Jewish lady with 2 Gentile daughters who were strangers. Everybody say strangers. Not a part of Israel. They didn't belong to Israel, but they married the sons. They had no part of the covenant. Sons died, the husband dies. You know the story. Here they are. Naomi looks at the one and says, are you leaving? You can go home. You go back to your family, go back to what you were used to. And the one says, yes. She says, I'm leaving and I will go. Thank you for allowing me to stay. It's been good. And she goes off and she runs. But the other one she comes to is Ruth, and she says, will you leave too? You can go too. I have nothing for you. In fact, she was poor. Everyone say poor. She was poor. Ruth was also poor. Ruth had nothing to depend on. See, in the days of ancient Israel, follow me, in the days of ancient Israel, you had to rely on a husband to provide for you. It wasn't like today where ladies can get jobs and live independently. In ancient Israel, you had to have a covering. Everyone say covering. So a man would take you under as his bride, and he would say, I'm going to cover you, protect you, provide for you, protect you from all the bad stuff, and I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to feed you and take care of you. Ruth didn't have that. Naomi didn't have that. And she said, you can go home too, honey. I ain't got anything for you because I'm poor. There's no hope. And she said, your God is my God. Your people, my people. And where you go, I will go. And by the way, where you die, I'll die too. How many know that's commitment? That's a pledge. Shavuot. What happens? What happens to Ruth? Well, you're jumping ahead of the story. Ruth comes back with Naomi. Jew and Gentile, a picture of the Jew and the Gentile walking together. They're coming back into the land of Eretz Israel, back into the land, and they have nothing. Everyone say nothing. They don't have anything. It's interesting. Where do we see Ruth? Where do we see her?
In the field.
At his feet.
We'll stop there. Where do we see Ruth? We see her in the field. In a, not just any field, but in a four-cornered field. Remember what we read? Shavuot, and remember that little portion that was right there about the corners of the field not being gleaned? In other words, when you were a farmer, you went and you kind of made a big circle. You didn't touch that corner, you didn't touch that corner, you didn't touch that corner, and you didn't touch that corner. Now, some of the rabbis will say it was actually the ends and not the corners. I choose to believe it was the corners, the four corners. You left those corners, it was like a big circle. So you let those corners alone, and they are for who? The poor and the stranger. What do we see in Ruth? She is poor and she's a stranger. That word for poor, by the way, it has to do with, it's not just barely making it by. It's not just, I'm just paying my bills, Rabbi. It's not about that. This poor means I have nothing. There's no house. All I have are the clothes on my back and what somebody would graciously bless me with. And that's it. How many know that's poor?
And
Naomi had nothing. They had nothing. Nothing. Poor and destitute. And here we see her as a poor person and a stranger. No promise to the covenant. And she begins to glean in the field because one man, follow me, one man was obedient to Torah. Boaz, who made a difference by being obedient to God's word. Well, that's a strange word, Rabbi. Why would he even command people to do that? To care for the poor, to care for the stranger. And because of his obedience to the word, he finds a woman in the field. Everybody say, the field. It's interesting. So what does he do to this woman? You know the story of Ruth. It's harvest time. Four-cornered field. Harvest time. She's out there and she comes home with all these bundles. And by the way, Boaz says, by the way, guys, he tells his helpers, listen, leave extra bundles. Just put them down for her to pick up. Just put them down for her to pick up. That when she comes home, she'll be carried. We will come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. She's carrying in those sheaves. And her mother-in-law says, where did you go today? And she said, there's a guy down there, Boaz. He's your kinsman redeemer. He's the one that can step in and help us. Interesting. I did a wedding years ago. I'll never forget it. I've done so many weddings, but this one I'll never forget. It's in the mountains of North Carolina. And we talked beforehand, and we set it up that their story, her name was Ruth. One of the ladies' names was Ruth. But we talked about Ruth. And so what this lady did, not Ruth, but what the lady did was when she married her Boaz, I'll never forget, her bridegroom came down the aisle and he was laying sheaves, wheat. And when she came in and all her stuff, she was picking up the wheat. Beautiful picture. I'll never forget that. That was moving. So what do we see here in Boaz and Ruth? Here is a poor woman who is a stranger to Israel, but yet she's being blessed in the four corners of a field because she's poor. Everybody say poor. We usually don't talk about the poor. In fact, in society, most people don't even, they just want to ignore the poor. But the Father's heart is for the poor. We may come back to this. By the way, we didn't touch on this, but the bridegroom is one who is attached or joined to another. How many of you have a heavenly bridegroom? He's attached to you. He's joined to you. He's not going to leave you or forsake you. He's attached to Israel too. He's not going to leave her or forsake her. You see something about the poor. Leviticus, when you reap the harvest of your land, you're not to reap the furthest corners of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor, for the stranger. I am Adonai your God. Interesting that word. I am. Ani in Hebrew. Everyone say Ani. It's interesting about that. Let's look at it in the language. Here it is in the Hebrew. Okay? I want you to see a word here. Let's find the word Ani. Elohim. There's Elohim. Yahweh. Adonai. See that word? Ani. Ani. You know what that is? It's also another word in Hebrew, and it means poor. It means poor. So when you say I am, you're also saying the word poor. Now we say, well, wait a minute, how can Adonai himself say that? How do we see that in his own name and who he is? It's not Ayah Hashem. Ayah, it's not the name that he mentioned, the great I am. But when we say I am Rabbi William, or you are, when we say I am, we're making a declaration that we are poor. See, I want you to get the concept here. His heart is for the poor. Say that with me. His heart is for the poor. He's connected to the, there's a heart there for the poor folk. We'll get that. Let's look at this again. There's the field. Woman gleaning in the field. Isaiah 58:10. If you give yourself to the hungry, satisfy the desire of the afflicted or the poor, your light will rise in darkness and your gloom will be like midday. Look at another. Jeremiah 22:16. He pled the case of the poor and needy, or the poor and weak, so it went well. Is not this knowledge of me? It is a declaration of Adonai. I want to stop there because the King James says it a certain way. Some of your other translations say it. But it says, and he pled the case of the poor, ani beni, the poor and the weak, and so it went well. Is not this the knowledge of me? Isn't this to know me? How many want to know the Messiah? Yeah. See, he's saying it's to know me is what he's saying, is to care for those that are despondent, the poor and the weak, that have nobody. You want to really know me? You want to know my heart? He says, you care for those that have no hope. Care for those that have no help. That's my heart, is what he's saying. And here we get it all wrong in the Western concept. Western Christianity says this, that if we just store up enough head knowledge, if we just go to all the studies, and here maybe studying is great, but you can know everything in the Word and yet not know him. And he's saying, if you want to know me, he says, know my heart, to reach out to the poor and those in need. And we say, well, Rabbi, I may not even know poor people. Listen, if you don't have the Messiah, you're poor.
Amen.
How many know people that don't have the Messiah? They're poor. They have nothing. They may have all this world's goods, but they have nothing. Nothing without. They're nothing without the Messiah. Everybody say poor. I need the poor, the needy. Let's look at just a few more. Getting anything out of this, guys, today? I'll show you some more here. Matthew 5:3, the words of Yeshua. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Yeshua's not making a declaration that we all need to sell our stuff, live like monks, and move on a mountaintop. See, that's what the early churches used to do way back when. They would say, if you're really dedicated, you're really sold out, give all your stuff away and be poor for him. That's not what he's saying. And I'll say even this. I don't believe we have to be poor people for the Messiah in wealthy things. You know, there's too many scriptures. He blessed Abraham. He blessed Isaac. He blessed Jacob. But that was to bless others. Amen. How about Boaz? Was Boaz a blessed man? Yes. Say this with me. Boaz was wealthy. Yes. If he were not, if he didn't have a field for Ruth to glean in, but he had the field. It's better to give. Leave her some. Leave her some. Watch this. I love this. Blessed are the poor in spirit. The poor in spirit. The poor in spirit are those that you can't afford to be proud. Let's say that again. You can't afford to be proud. See, pride comes from, I've got it all. Pride is that church that we see in the book of Revelation that says, we got everything we need. We got the goods. We got the, listen, even today there are people that say, we've got everything we need. We've got a beautiful building. All the attendance is overflowing. Finances are great. There's not a care in the world. But do they know Yeshua? See, you can have the best of programs and you can be feeding all the poor. But if Messiah is not in the midst of it, and people aren't coming into the kingdom, how many know that's poor? Yeshua himself said, you're wretched and you're poor. You're miserable, you're blind, you're naked. You don't even know it. It's what he's telling them.
That's why a lot of churches are being turned into libraries and other things.
Yes. So how many want to be a fired up remnant for the body of the Messiah? We'll pray for those that didn't raise their hand. Interesting. The poor. We're poor in spirit. To know the Messiah, if I could say it this way, to know the Messiah means you have to first humble yourself. And then he will lift you up. You have to first come to him. Like Boaz's field. You have to go into that field and you have to hit those four corners and you say, listen, I got nothing. I got nothing. What have I got? We come to the Messiah, we want to make a declaration of faith. Please stand for the declaration of faith. Or come to the, and that's okay. You say come to the front. You know, people give altar calls and that's fine. But there comes a point in us that we say, we got nothing without him. We have nothing. I'm glad we have him. How many glad we have him? But to get saved, if you want to be saved, you have to humble yourself and declare, I am poor. There's nothing in me that's going to earn my salvation. I can't make it happen. Can't make it happen. I was studying this morning, I'm not by might or power, but by my spirit. Interesting. New concept there for me as I just keep rehashing this thing over and over again, that no matter what your finances are, no matter what your ability is, no matter what your army is, you can't make it happen. I can make it happen, is what he's saying. And he pledges with his people to say, I'll make it happen for you. You want to come to know me? But you have to say you're poor first. Well, I don't need anything. Okay, if you don't need anything, then he can't give it to you. But he's telling his people, I pledge to be with you, but you have to be like Ruth to say, listen, I got nothing in me. Nothing in me. If you have the Messiah, you have it all. How many have the Messiah this morning? Interesting. The poor and the stranger. This is a season where we remember a song. We can say that we remember, but what's the greatest love song in the history of Adonai's people? I am my beloved's, and he is mine. Say it with me. I am my beloved's, and he is mine. The bride and the bridegroom. What is it in Hebrew? Oh, you know it. Ani, ladodi li. And what does it start with? Poor. Ani. How are you going to get connected to the bridegroom? How do you know that he is yours and you are his? By recognizing that in your own strength, you just poor. That's without him. When you get him, you got it all. And we're like those strangers in that four corner of the field. In fact, I want to say it like this. I want you to think of something here. I want you to think of all the blessings. And go to a picture here if I can. Oh, well, we got one more. Let all those who seek you rejoice and be glad. Let those who love your salvation continually say, Adonai be magnified. But I am poor and needy. Yet Adonai, Yahweh, is mindful of me. You are my help and my deliverer. Oh my God, do not delay. Notice the confession. I'm poor and I'm needy. How many know that you're needy this morning? We are needy people. I'm not needy on you, I'm needy on him. He says you recognize that and then he'll help you. Let's look at it. Well, do we want to go there? Not yet. Okay, everybody think in your minds of a field. See the picture of the field in your mind? Four-cornered field. What took place in that four-cornered field? Think of all the blessings seen. You may have not seen this until today, but think of all the blessings that were seen in a four-cornered field. Ruth was blessed. Naomi was blessed. Boaz was blessed because of obedience of not sowing in the four corners of that field. Boaz received a blessing. Because of that blessing, there was a bride and a bridegroom. They joined together in a pledge. And now we see Jesse, and now we see King David because of that blessing of a four-cornered field. Ultimately, we see the Messiah himself come forth from that union of a poor, strange woman to her kinsman redeemer, all because of a four-cornered field. You ever saw that before? How many had ever seen that one? Wow. All the blessings come from this one field. The field. Bless the poor, bless the needy, the stranger. She was both. I say it like this. Let's look at this because I want you to see that she went. Watch this. This blew my mind. Ruth 3:9. Here's the story. Ruth goes down. Her mother-in-law tells her. She says, "Here's the next step. You go in. They're going to be doing the harvest. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to secretly hide." A little bit of music to accompany the story. You're going to secretly hide, and when they have all parted and they've gathered in that wheat and they have that harvest, you're going to creep out and you're going to approach him. You're going to make a declaration to him that you want him to redeem you and take you from this poor place to a place of being his bride. And so, what does she do? She hides, she waits, she bides her time, she's patient. Everybody say patient. Committed. She's committed. And when it's the right time, and Scripture says that he is laying down, he lays down there, and all of a sudden he wakes up and there's a lady standing, and he's like, "Well, who is this and what's going on?"
She's not standing.
She says, "Who are you?" he asked, and she says, "I am Ruth, your handmaid," she answered. Well, look at what she says. "Spread the corner of your garment over your handmaid. You are a Goel, you are a kinsman redeemer. Spread the garment over your handmaid." It's interesting. Watch this. She went from a four-cornered field to a four-cornered garment.
Right. Yes.
What's on the... See, when we talk about four corners, everyone say four corners. What do we see in these four corners of the garment? This is the garment of the tzitzit. This is where the promise, the covenant, you will, I do. Everyone say, I do.
I do.
It's to set apart the people of Israel. I do. In the four corners of the garment. Ruth goes from a four-cornered field. Spread that garment over me and put that over me. From a four-cornered field to a four-cornered garment. What happened? What happened at Shavuot? Acts 2. The Spirit came down. The Spirit of the bridegroom came down. Now what do we see? Come here, brother. You two, come here because you're tall. I love it. Come here. Yes. Take this, would you? I want you to spread it out. You get one end, you get the other, and that is, actually, somebody gave that to me as a gift. You should go ahead and show that to them. Hand-painted. She hand-painted it. It's fire. There's the menorah. There's the fire. But if you'll look, there's scripture all around it. She's written scripture that you can't see. But I want you to see, I've had this for years, but now hold it up above me. Hold it up above. Tilt it. Tilt it like a hoopah, guys. All right, we got it. Okay, so this is the hoopah. Four corners of the garment. It says, I am my beloved's, and he is mine. And he takes me under the shadow of his wing, and he hides me, and he pledges. And what happened in Acts 2? Watch this. The Spirit, the garment came down. Bring it down. And covered, come on, bring it down. And covered his bride. And now she's wrapped in a okay, you can let it go now. The bride is wrapped, thank you guys, is wrapped in that spirit of his garment. And now the bride goes out and says, let me tell you about your Boaz. Because he's given me a pledge, and he's given me his spirit of power. He'll never leave me and never forsake me. Now, I have his garment, and I can tell the poor and needy about their Goel, their Redeemer. You have a Redeemer. You have a Redeemer. Do you know you have a Redeemer? You're poor and you're needy. You have everything in the Messiah. And so just like, remember Elijah and Elisha? And when he was taken up, what came down? The mantle, the four corners of the garment, and it covers, it's a picture of the power. It's the pledge that I'll never leave you. It wasn't Elijah, it was the Spirit behind Elijah. And so we're called as that bride today. We have a pledge. If you have the Spirit of Messiah, you have a pledge that covers you, a garment, because the Bible tells us that love covers. And so that love has covered us and has wrapped us up in His pledge. And He says, I'll never leave you and I will never forsake you. Amen? Amen. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Let's give Messiah a hand clap of praise. Now I want you to see something, because you don't see this in the English, but I want you to see it if you're reading it in the Hebrew. There's a picture, a beautiful picture of the bride and her groom. I want you to see. Okay, there's the field. The four-cornered field. Now they take that four-cornered garment and they go out to the four corners of the world, proclaiming the good news of Messiah Yeshua. By the way, how many books of the gospel are there? 4. Isn't that interesting? All this 4. Go out, covered in that four-cornered garment, and they're teaching. And it's interesting. We are called to do that. If you look in the Hebrew, where we left off today, Leviticus 22, there are chapters that are written in such a way, and if you see it in the Hebrew, sometimes you'll see it like this. That chapter ends with a summit. It's all by itself. It talks about the field. It talks about the four corners of the field. And then it ends. And there's the strangest thing in Hebrew. All there by itself is a little lonely samech. And I said, what in the world is a samech doing there? Now we understand that according to, when you read the Hebrew, there's open passages, there's open and closed. This is making a statement that it's finished, it's done. That portion is done, and there will be another parsha, another thing coming. But everybody say it's done. It's done, it's finished. Okay. But then I looked at that, after that four-corner field, and I looked, the samech is a picture of the mystery. It's the only enclosed Hebrew letter in its original form. It's a mystery letter. They call it because it surrounds something. But if you look, it doesn't have corners. It's a picture of that field that has been harvested. You see in the picture?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
The mystery, listen, the mystery of the book of Ruth is whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, you and I have a kinsman redeemer. And he wants to pledge himself to us and cover us at the Shavuot and say, you go forward and tell all those 4 people who I am. And it's not by your might or power. You have my pledge. Amen? Amen. Stand with me if you would. Did you all get anything out of this today? Who had questions? Okay, we have some time. Go ahead, Al.
The last word in that was G-O-A-L, right?
Goel.
Huh?
Yes.
How do you pronounce that?
Goel.
Go-L.
Goel.
And it means enclosure.
No, Goel is your kinsman redeemer. That's one who redeems you. Your kinsman
Because she
redeemer.
couldn't be redeemed by somebody who wasn't in the same lineage.
Right.
It had to be in the same lineage.
Yes. There was only one other guy that could do it, and actually he didn't want to do it.
Well, I know.
He didn't say I do. He's one who didn't say I do. It's
He
interesting.
was blessed too, actually.
Well, we don't really know whatever happened to that guy.
Well,
You know, think about this too. How about Orpah?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Not Oprah, Orpah. Remember her? She was one who was not committed. In fact, her name means stiff-necked.
yeah.
The rabbis teach that she went on to become the mother of Goliath. Stiff-necked. Yeah, because of her rebelliousness. See that? So there are people that sometimes it's better not to know what happened to them. You know what I'm saying? So, yes, who had another question?
Oh, I was just good. I noticed in that book that Amy was talking about this morning, a lot of the artwork, if you look at the artwork, there was leaks in the sky everywhere, just like, so she was,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, couple, yes.
I was thinking about the four corners of the New Jerusalem,
Yes.
which one's back down here.
Beautiful. Yes.
I think it's fitting that you're talking about commitment and that as it relates to Shavuot, and that we will be observing Shavuot in the new building, where it's going to take commitment for all this, responsibility and all the things
Oh, I
attached
have
to that.
another message. Wait till we get over there. Because we're going to come back to that four-cornered field. We're going to talk about that four-cornered field and what that represents to us as believers today. There's still another message in that. We're going to revisit that field very soon. John?
It's interesting how often in Scripture God identifies with the poor and the widow and the orphan. You don't minister to them, forget relating to Him.
Good point. That's his heart. Yes, Tom?
I'm struck by the extra sheaves that Boaz provided for Ruth. Not just the minimum that the Torah prescribes in the corners, but an abundance, a huge abundance that came out of the whole field.
You know what that says to me? Favor. It says favor. So, yeah, good insight. Anybody else? No? Okay, let me send you out with a blessing. I really felt led this morning to, if you feel like you need a fresh, a renewed sense of the Ruach, of the Spirit, I'm just going to ask you real quick to come. If that's just you, maybe you've never said, well, I don't know if I've ever received the Ruach Kodesh. We get these impressions that it's got to look weird, or it's got to be, people swinging from the ceilings and stuff. I don't understand that, but I'm just saying, if that's what you do, I mean, we don't have chandeliers to swing from anyhow. But we get this preconceived idea. The Ruach Kodesh, there's fruit. And so if you say, I need a fresh filling today. We have any musicians in the house? Mark or Michael, would you please come? Come on, guys. If you just need a fresh, just a refilling, or you might say, Rabbi, I don't know that I've ever actually experienced the Ruach HaKodesh, the filling, the infilling. If that's you, I'm just going to say, come on. We're not going to do anything weird to you. I just want to pray for you. Show me your face, guys, maybe. They can do that. Anybody else? I feel like there's more. Just wait just a few minutes. If that's you, come on up. We're going to ask you to stretch out. We're going to try to make one or two lines. So let's come up close, guys. Come up close. Come up close. For those of you that are back there, would you just stretch your hands? I'm just going to anoint you guys with oil. As a sign. Father, in the wonderful name of Yeshua the Messiah, we thank you for your word. Father, we anoint by faith a fresh anointing of your Ruach Kodesh, a fresh anointing, Father. Fill them up, fill them up. Your Spirit, Abba Father. Your Spirit. Show us a fresh anointing. To his soul's feet. Thank you for that rest. Mighty name of Yeshua. We thank you that you are our Abba, you're our Royal. Lord Yeshua, you're our Redeemer. You're the one that redeemed us. You bought us. We belong to you. Today we make a new commitment, Father. We're all yours. Help us where we struggle, Father. We're yours. We belong to you. Ani leduli viduli li. I am my beloved's and he is mine. Say this with me. I am my beloved's and he is mine. And he's faithful. And I'm faithful to him. In his strength. Father, say it with me. Father, I thank you for your spirit that you've given me to work this out. Your works in this world to help the poor. You bought me with the price. The blood of Messiah. Yeshua. And you give us good gifts. Thank you for your spirit. I'll walk in you. In Yeshua's name. And one day, I look forward to hearing, well done. Good job. Faithful one. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Father. Yivrech Adonai vayisharecha Yair Adonai panav elecha vihunecha Yisai Adonai panav elecha v'yesen lecha Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh lift his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift his face and shine on each one of you and give you his shalom. In the face of our Sar Shalom, the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, the Prince of Peace. And all his people said, Amen. 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 Hey, turn to two people around you, give them a hug. Tell them Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful, wonderful day in Messiah. Torah class, 2 o'clock, guys.